Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Of course, here with Jeremy. Got a cool video we're gonna do today, a little Q&A, but we picked kind of three of what I feel at least are the kind of most exciting and interesting questions, and getting them a lot as well. So figured what's better than let's do a few segments going through them with Jeremy. But Jeremy, first things first, how are you?
Oh, doing very well, Jason. How about yourself?
Yeah, good. No complaints, no complaints. Hopefully, summer can last a little longer. It's going by pretty quick, but yeah, no, things are good. But let's hop into it. I wanted to kick this off. I get a lot of questions. A lot of people obviously extremely curious about how does kind of a new device enter the operating room and kind of what that process is. And I figured we kind of start there and then go over some of the other ones that stemmed from that.
Yeah, no problem. That's a great question, and it is a little bit foreign to a lot of folks. So happy to help walk people through that. And we're living it every day right now, so it's a great timing for us to be sharing that. So for us, and for most devices of our kind of scale and impact, it all starts with the surgeon, right? And they are what we call the key champion through our sales cycle. They're the ones that want to use our technology to impact their patients. So they have to see the value prop first and foremost. And then from there, it gets a little bit nuanced from whether it's a surgeon that's an employee of a hospital or if they have a private practice that's just operating out of the hospital. But once you have that end user that's established as a champion, then they need to work it through the procurement cycle in the hospital setting. And depending on the size of the expenditure, that might go through a capital budgeting process from the finance world, so that you would establish your capital needs well in advance. Then they go through their budgeting cycle. Then you hope that that capital budget's still available when it comes time to actually get the equipment. And that's why we have elected the business model we have, because we want to leapfrog and avoid that whole capital cycle process. So that's why we're going on a per procedure basis, which comes out of the operating budget for the department. So you have your OR director, your supply chain, your biomed, which is the group that makes sure the equipment is safe and effective for use, and make sure it meets all of their facility standards and everything. And they form what's called a value analysis committee. So ultimately, the value analysis committee is a cross-functional team with the intention of representing three, I call it the triple bottom line. So in order to get medical device technology into the operating room today, you need to, first and foremost, improve patient outcomes. Secondly, you need to do it in a way that doesn't disrupt, the workflow for the hospital provider, or doesn't disrupt their way of treating patients. And thirdly, it needs to make economic sense. So you've got your finance, your supply chain, and your reimbursement folks all thinking about how this technology is going to impact their world. And if that group of the value analysis committee says we like it, then you get your technology in, you train your surgeon, and he or she is off and running.
Interesting. No, I love it, and like you said, foreign to a lot of people. I really want to encourage any other questions that come from these answers. Please drop them below. I mean, you kind of segued it perfectly. So that really the biggest question we've been getting is, we talked about kind of the business model and really just the charging model. And so here's a kind of a question, and we'll run through it in more detail. So the question is kind of, why is the model of charging $1,000 a procedure something the hospital would accept? And did the company evaluate other models, and why is this one the one you guys went with?
Yep. Yeah, we've actually done pretty extensive pricing analysis with this technology and looked at different ways to capture the value for the technology. And the reason the hospital likes the $1,000 per procedure model is primarily a cash flow value proposition. So one, it avoids for the end user, so our champion, the surgeon, they don't have to fight for capital dollars, so it's a little bit easier for them to pick it up. But then from a hospital administration perspective, we are matching their cash outflows with their operational savings this way. So effectively, they would likely be using some form of debt. At the parent capital structure, they'd be using some form of debt to purchase a capital device. Well, for us, we're able to give them that capital device because of the margin on the consumable. Our payback period is much faster than it would be for them. So think of basically every procedure they do, they're avoiding a reoperation cost. So they're much more willing to invest in our technology on an every procedure basis. So that's the big win there. And then, kind of back to the perspective of the company, it's also a stickier relationship because in order to get the use of our capital equipment, they need to sign a contract with us to say, I'm going to use X number of consumables. So we get a better utilization, and it's a much more defendable place because once you're in there and you're on contract, you kind of own the real estate.
Yeah, no, interesting. Honestly, great answer, and I thought it was an amazing question. So happy to kind of go through that. So pretty cool. And now kind of wanted to go into a lot of people asking, and really kind of stemming from this, how many operations can we expect, maybe one hospital to be using, and kind of going through a little bit more of how many of these surgeries happen, and talking about more on the ROI front. You say, hey, if we can stop kind of the reoperating, well, let's talk a little bit more about those numbers.
Yeah, certainly. So the range of lumpectomy. So I'll start with our initial addressable market in breast conserving surgery. So the range of lumpectomies can be pretty wide. You have on the small end community hospitals where on the whole most treatment takes place, but per facility it tends to be a smaller number of procedures. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have academic institutions like MD Anderson or Memorial Sloan Kettering, where they're doing 1,500, 2,000 lumpectomies a year. So two very different ends of the spectrum. But the average volume institution is somewhere around 150 to 200 lumpectomies per year. And if you think about, so that's maybe the microeconomic side of the equation. From a total procedure perspective, in the US, we're starting with 200,000 lumpectomies happening annually. With today, that's only about 2/3 of breast cancer treatment. So I believe that there's a big opportunity for technologies like ours to expand that 2/3 number to 85, 90% of treatment, because it's really, from my perspective, it's better for the patient to conserve as much healthy tissue as possible. I understand, there's genetic wise, you may want to take a prophylactic mastectomy so you get it all out. But we're seeing an emerging trend where more and more patients would rather have 2 lumpectomies, even today before our technology, instead of 1 mastectomy. So with technology like this that helps give them confidence they can get it all the first time, I think that number is going to continue to grow, which will really just accelerate the already kind of mid-single digit growth rate in lumpectomies today.
Yeah, no, awesome. A great answer. Just US, let alone what's happening worldwide, and obviously some massive growth there. Here, kind of the last question. I really wanted to put it all together. A lot of people asking, hey, we talk a lot about breast cancer, but maybe what are the other use cases, or can there be other use cases for this device? And figured why not throw that your way.
Great, yeah, and maybe that's a great segue again. So as we think about utilization of each individual device, a device in breast cancer might only be used 2-3 days a week because that's all that's happening in that OR. So as we think about other tissue types, it's great. It's a great opportunity to continue to drive utilization with the device that the hospital already has on site. So we're very keenly watching where the market pulls us from another tissue type perspective. So we've already accumulated some pretty compelling data in areas like head and neck, kidney cancer. I think the value proposition in some other, ductal organs like pancreas can be pretty exciting, and a real opportunity to change and impact survivorship in indications like that, instead of just more so quality of survivorship in breast cancer. So lots of new uncharted territory for us that our existing device already has FDA clearance for. So remember, we can sell, or our device can be used on any kind of human tissue microstructure today. So the AI is really the only breast cancer specific piece of our technology. And then, I kind of call that horizontal expansion. And then what I'm referring to as vertical expansion is across the surgery workflow. So before you come into surgery, you get a biopsy done on your tumor, and it's getting harder and harder for radiologists to make sure they've penetrated the targeted lesion, it's called. So, cancer is being found earlier. It's a much smaller, piece of tissue that the radiologist is trying to get. So having technology like ours that can help them confirm instantly that they've penetrated the appropriate technology is a big win for them. And then after the surgery in pathology, unfortunately, pathology is the gold standard, but they have to process the specimen and sample parts of the specimen. So they really only end up looking at about 16% of that margin when they're doing their analysis. So for us, we can say, hey, pathologist, if you have to look at 16% of the margin, use our technology to look at 100% so that you can do your part on the right 16%.
Yeah, no, love it. Well, look, these were the core questions I wanted to go over, kind of to mention some other ones and tease people for what's to come. Yes, some questions about AI tech things we'll get to in a future video. We'll do a whole segment there, as well as clinical stuff. So we'll leave that for videos to come. Jeremy, thanks so much. I think you absolutely crushed a lot of these questions. And again, I want to encourage anyone to keep those questions coming, and we'll definitely get to them in future Q&As. But Jeremy, thanks so much for joining.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jason.